Hi everyone. Today we are going to be exploring a tool called Infogram. And say you have a bunch of data sets. Here's just a few examples, right? And they're not super pretty to look at the moment, but what if we could use this tool Infogram and create these really interactive and easy to use charts that we can embed into our websites or anything that you want. So I'm just going to show a final version of what we are going to be building. So as you can see, I did actually some internet research and sleuthing about some of you in the audience, and I found out one of you is from Portland and the other is from Baltimore. And so I kind of found a lot of data about those cities that's a little bit relevant to you and your backgrounds. And we're going to be building some of these charts and visuals based upon that. To start out, you can see we built some different bar charts, some line graphs. This is kind of an infographic. This is a donut chart, and this is sort of a pictorial chart, which looks pretty nice. Another infogram visual. And lastly, this is a bubble chart, which is one of my favorites. And without further ado, we can get started. So this is just kind of a blank template. To start out, we can click chart and click add chart. And as you can see, there are a bunch of different ones. We can start out with this simple grouped column chart. So you just click insert and it's already in here and it's already filled with some data. And this is kind of the look of a typical grouped bar chart. And if you see, once you click into the chart on the side, you see there's two tabs, edit data and settings. So edit data is where we're gonna start. So you can delete what's in here and we can look back into this data set and we can copy and paste this data in here. So what this shows is just over the years, how Portland and Baltimore have changed in terms of the number of people in both cities. And so we can put it inside of here, and here we are. In just a few minutes, we already have a chart that we've created. So as you can see, it shows kind of over the last century or so how the number of people have changed. And you can see with Portland, there's this steady upward growth, whereas with Baltimore, and you can hover over these two as well, with Baltimore, there's this growth that sort of peaks in the 1950s and then declines over time. And so over here, once you click into the chart, in the settings as well, there are a bunch of different things that you can change. One thing that I typically do is I click into axis and grid, and you can add in an x-axis title. So I'm gonna change this to year, and then the y-axis is the number of people. So this is just another way of building a bar chart. And so I am gonna copy this and paste it. Okay, this is the exact same chart, but why don't we change the way that we visualize it? That is super simple. So you just take this and you're in settings, and if you see it's a grouped bar chart, you can click change and you can turn it into a line graph. And here you can see, just on a really obvious level, Portland kind of growing over time. You can see around the 2010s, Portland starts to exceed Baltimore in terms of number of people. One particular chart that I really like is actually the race line. And so if you click this, you can kind of see how it changes over time. It's very interactive. So that's kind of one of my favorites that you can also add in as well. And so if we're telling a story, we can also insert this. I've already included it inside just to save some time, but if you visit chart and you scroll to all the way to facts and figures, you can insert it here. And so one of the things that I added in was that since 1950, the city of Baltimore has lost 396,000 people. And so Baltimore really hit its stride in 1950 because it was powered by shipyards and steel. But when those factories closed and people moved to the suburbs, you can see that sort of decline happening. Whereas Portland, if you can take a look, started out as this tiny timber town and then grew over time, especially in the 1980s as the technology sector took off. A bunch of people moved there. And so, within a few minutes, we have basically constructed these charts and told a story about these two cities in post-industrial America. Now that we have a good sense of how to build some basic charts, we can look at some more data and build some different charts and see kind of the wide variety of different things that you can create. So I looked online and I also found out that one of you double majored in military history. So I decided to look within the city that you lived in, what is kind of the makeup of military veterans. One thing that I did is I found some data based on what war that they fought in. And, you can see there's World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, First Gulf War, Second Gulf War. So we can take that data and we can create a chart, kind of a simple pie chart, right? And if we click in Edit Data, which you're now familiar with, and insert that, you can kind of see just on a pictorial level, these are, if this whole circle was the veterans in Baltimore, these are the different wars that they fought in and the percentages. So you can see the largest chunk is definitely the Vietnam War. And one chart that I kind of like in particular that's very similar to the pie chart is called the donut chart. And here you could fit a little bit of text and you still have that clean look where you can see all the different percentages. And now I'm going to show another chart that I think is pretty unique. So I'm just going to copy and paste that same one. And instead, I am going to change it to this pictorial chart. And you can see there's now, because if you think about it, veterans are people, right? And now you can actually see them visualized as, say, people in a room. And then each one is a different color based on the war that they fought in. And you can even kind of adjust the size and it's going to scale accordingly. One of the things you can do in Edit Data and in Settings is you can actually add some labels. If I turn this on, you can actually see the different wars. And when you're scrolling the different wars, you can kind of see the number of people. So this is a pretty unique feature that I kind of like to use when you're visualizing different groups of people. And on top of that, you can also change sort of the icon that's used. So it doesn't have to be a person, it can be anything. Okay, so if we're telling a story based on this, what we've really found is, there's a large percentage of Vietnam War veterans, and this reflects Baltimore's high enlistment and draft rates during the 1960s and early 1970s. And, one thing you can do is just include some of these numbers and figures and then explain what they are. Okay, the last data set that I wanted to show has to do with the Portland Art Museum, because I saw that one of you interned and worked with data with this art museum. So I thought that was very cool. And I actually wanted to do a comparative analysis of different museums across the country and how they compare to the Portland Art Museum. So with this chart, we can do a simple sort of scatter plot to start with. So we insert the scatter plot here, right? And it already has some sample data. So we click Edit Data. We're going to put in what we have about these different museums. And now you see a simple scatter plot, and we can relabel these axes by clicking Axis and Grid and changing the default x-axis and y-axis titles to gallery space in square feet and to number of works of art. And from here, you can kind of see this compares gallery space and number of works, and you can see kind of the spread. And if you scroll over, you can see kind of the different museums. But if you look at the data here, we actually had another aspect to it, which is the annual number of visitors. And we can't really visualize that from a simple scatter plot. So one thing I like to do when there is this other attribute is to change it to something called a bubble chart. And this is where it is. So if you see now, the size of the dots are changing to bubbles, and the bubble size is based on the number of annual visitors. So if there's more annual visitors, the bubbles are bigger. And you can kind of see how that changes across different museums. And one thing I like to do is if you want to highlight the Portland Art Museum in general, you can click into color, and instead of using one color, you turn this toggle off, you scroll over, you find the Portland Art Museum, and we can make this purple or something. And now you can see, this is the Portland Art Museum compared to all these other art museums across the country. So yeah, thank you so much. And this is been sort of a short guide into a lot of the different charts and offerings, and in just 10 or so minutes you've created this comparison of these different cities and a bunch of different charts. And in fact, you can also insert a little gift to celebrate. So that's also very simple. All you have to do is click into add graphics, and there's a series of different images or gifts that you can add in there. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.